All right, kids, so we come to the end of the year, or coming up on it, and I wanted to give one last gift to those that have not seen the game. Okay? As much fun as I have with the law and with the legal, neither are the real deal. Politics is not, none of the vagaries that you see, principles, ideas, and philosophies. Those things don't drive this world no matter how much you would like it to. There is a difference. So, as I draw down my work, which is literally going to stop with this video, I want you to remember that after this point, what you focus on is what you focus on. But why would you ever focus on things inferior and diminutive to what it is that you know now? Why? There's much more out there to figure out. People have no possible idea of how the system even works, the real system. So what I'm getting ready to speak on and read to you is old game theory. The original panopticonic game theory. Okay? All right. It is a way of showing you what is coming again. Okay? People get freaked out about a lot of stuff when in fact it's only a reboot, kids. They got to have them. If they don't have them, they don't control. And the group that is running this has been running this for untold how long. This predates Babylon. This predates Sumeria, the Code of Hammurabi. It predates all of this. And as you well know, we only have fragments of what may or may not have come before. So, I want you to remember that. Now, many of you may think you have read what I'm getting ready to read to you. You didn't read it. You looked at it and passed it over. Okay? That's just the way it goes. Okay? Many people claim to have read many things. What they did was they stared at it and did not read it for what it says. And the designers, the originators of this game, this system game, the man-made system game with man-made gods with feats of clay, fleet feats of clay to shoot with skeets. Yes. Anyway, they knew full well that people would scan it and not comprehend it. They would repeat it like a parrot and then forget it. Okay? You're not on that playing field anymore. You should know that. You're not inside the pyramid anymore. You're standing outside of it in your own little desert that's devoid of all these problems and all these things. You have the luxury of patience and time as much as you want. And there is no rush. The system knows this because the system designed this. You should know this too. Okay, you have stepped outside of those things such as man-made time. Okay, now as you walk further away from the pyramid, you'll begin to realize that no matter who you would love to blame, Jesuits, Jews, Romans, the British, the Americans, the United States Corporation, Ron Paul, no matter who you would love to blame, they're all part of the game. Okay? Whether they know it or not, even Alex Jones, whether they know it or not is irrelevant. They are a piece on a board to be moved by some other man's decision, whether they know it or not. Some people love to get into the Illuminati and the secret societies that are not secret and are nothing more than corporations. They love the symbology. You already know what it is. It is a corporation full of people designed by the system to control others. Let it go. You're not a part of it. Do not interfere. That is the system. Let it go. All right? The more you inhabit a thing that you do not like, the more you become the thing you do not like. Leave it be. Let it go away. Fly, fly away like a butterfly, let it dissipate. These things are beneath you and should be. These menial things. But that's just me, and that's how I look at it, and that's not at all how I totally view it. Point is, we're going to begin, and the reason I'm doing this is because a girl named Irene, I think she's a Britisher or a Kiwi or an Australian, whatever, you'll find that people keep getting stuck in the fly trap of the pyramid. They only move up a level, then they'll move down a level, then they'll move sideways laterally. Always still inside the pyramid, and they never realize that. And in many cases, the maze is designed to make you think you have got out when you are still in. Now, I have done my utmost best to try to explain the best that I can, and I am by no means know all or be all when it comes to this. All right, and I hold Socrates up, but even he is fallacious in logic. Okay, we know these things. He is not the best, but he was the best that I can imagine. Right? But again, even he knew there's a limit to what you can do with your mind. Anyway, that being said, remember that this game is much older than what people like to claim it is, because that's the point after all. And secondly, it's a brand new day every day if you ask others out here that are truthers and patriots and etc. It's a brand new day. It's never happened before, and etc. etc. So, I'm sorry for such a long introduction, but it is vitally important, since I want this to be my last one over this on game theory before I move into that one final area. That one final area that I've talked with a couple of you about. That one final group. And it is not the NWO or the corporations. Those things are little. Those things are very little and tiny. Easily manipulated by others that know and originate such game theory. They're robots, middlemen, at best. But I can only point out so many things before even I get tired of pointing it out. So, on with the show here. We're going to talk about Plato, okay? And specifically, we're going to talk about Timaeus and Critias, which are two of his dialogues. And they are the only existing written records which specifically refer to Atlantis. Now, stop. No, I'm not talking about Atlantis. There is a very tiny section in here that has nothing to do with it. And that is what I'm going to tell you about. Okay? A little tiny section. All right. Socrates was having a debate, if you will, with Hermocrates, Timaeus, and Critias. Now you have to remember that in Plato's time, a lot of the distant past was long gone. Okay? This is long before the Library of Alexandria. And any repositories of knowledge were, as Runnymede and others well know, jealously guarded for the game theories that they had learned, the natural sciences, which were called magic, etc., you know, the herbalists, the alchemists of that time, okay, were jealously guarded. And remember, kids, the wheels on the bus go round and round, okay? Now, remember, we're talking about the Athenians. Now, supposedly, I want you to listen, supposedly, the story of Atlantis was conveyed to Solon by Egyptian priests. Now, there are some very logical fallacies with Egypt that I will not go into here. Let me point out that the Egyptians that Solon talks about are not Egyptians. They predated Egyptians. They predated what you would call Egyptians. What you call Egyptians now are people that moved into that empire and took over. And I would seriously consider that theory to be correct for the Aztecs and the Mayans. They moved in later. Okay? They were squatters. So much of the hieroglyphics and etc. are not from those cultures and civilizations. But that's only my view of it. And it can be, of course, disproved. I don't have enough to work off of. Now, Solon passed the tale to Socrates, the great-grandfather of Critias. Critias learned of it from his grandfather, also named Critias, son of Socrates. The dialogues that I'm going to read to you were written by Plato around 360 BC and are English translations. Now let me remind you about transliteration, where you translate the word, but you cannot correctly translate the context, the connotation, or the feel. Okay? That's just the limitations of language. That's also why people love to write so much and take away oral tradition. That is a game theory in and of itself. Oral tradition carries much more with it than writing ever could. Okay, now, you got to remember these were just treaties. Treaties on things of perfect societies or what they had heard, passing it back and forth to each other. Now, these people, Herodotus and the others, had benefactors. This stuff was not ever written for you and me. It was never intended for us. We were workers. In every civilization, we were slaves. White, black, red, yellow, it doesn't matter. You were always a slave. There's always a ruling class. And then there's always the guys that move those things very subtly. And they rarely speak. And I would highly doubt they're ever seen. But that is the way of things. Okay, so let me move on. We're going to talk about the one on Critias. Hermocrates says, "And we too, Socrates, as Timaeus says, will not be wanting in enthusiasm, and there is no excuse for not complying with your request. As soon as we arrived yesterday at the guest chamber of Critias, with whom we are staying, or rather on our way thither, we talked the matter over, and he told us an ancient tradition, which I wish Critias that you would repeat to Socrates, so that he may help us to judge whether it will satisfy his requirements or not." Critias says, "I will, if Timaeus, who is our other partner, approves," because the stories are long. Now, Timaeus says, "I quite approve." So Critias says, "Then listen, Socrates, to a tale which, though strange, is certainly true, having been attested by Solon, who was the wisest of the 7 sages. He was a relative and a dear friend of my great-grandfather Socrates, as he himself says in many passages of his poems. And he told the story to Critias, my grandfather, who remembered and repeated it to us. There were of old, he said, great and marvelous actions of the Athenian city, which have passed into oblivion through lapse of time and the destruction of mankind, and one in particular greater than all the rest. This we will now rehearse. It will be a fitting monument of our gratitude to you, and a hymn of praise, true and worthy, of the goddess on this her day of festival." Socrates, very good. And what is this ancient famous action of the Athenians, which Critias declared on the authority of Solon to be not a mere legend, but an actual fact? Critias, "I will tell an old story which I heard from an aged man, for Critias, at the time of telling it, was, as he said, nearly 90 years of age, and I was about 10. Now the day was that day of the Apertura, which is called the registration of youth, at which, according to custom, our parents gave prizes for recitations, and the poems of several poets were recited by us boys, and many of us sang the poems of Solon, which at that time had not gone out of fashion.